In the high-stakes power game of West African politics, the hunter has just become the hunted. A ghost of coups past, a man who himself seized power by force, has been captured and sent back to face the music. Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the former transitional president of Burkina Faso, is now in custody, his exile over, his future uncertain. This isn't just an arrest, it's a message. It's a declaration from the man who overthrew him, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, that the age of impunity is over. For months, whispers of plots and conspiracies have swirled around Damiba's exile in Togo. Whispers of assassination plots, of foreign-funded networks designed to corrupt the military, of a plan to plunge Burkina Faso back into chaos. Now, those whispers have become a political earthquake. Damiba has been extradited, a move that shatters the unspoken rule of safe havens for exiled strongmen. He is back in Ouagadougou, a prisoner of the state he once commanded. This dramatic capture signals a huge power shift. It's a consolidation of control by Captain Traoré that could either finally break the nation's cycle of military takeovers or ignite an even more dangerous fire within a divided army. So, who was really behind the web of conspiracies allegedly spun from exile? What does this unprecedented arrest mean for Burkina Faso's future? And how does this power play fit into the larger, continent-wide struggle for sovereignty that is redefining Africa? Stay with us as we unpack the full story of ambition, betrayal, and a young leader's ruthless bid to secure his revolution. Paul-Henri Damiba's comfortable life in exile ended abruptly. For over a year since his ouster in September 2022, he had found refuge in Lomé, the capital of Togo, under the protection of the Togolese state, a common arrangement for deposed leaders in the region. But that protection had its limits. The government of Captain Ibrahim Traoré wasn't content to let him be. They saw him as a clear and present danger, the alleged mastermind of a campaign to destabilize Burkina Faso from afar. For weeks, Ouagadougou had been aggressively demanding his extradition from Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé. The pressure was immense. Traoré's government repeatedly and publicly accused Damiba of orchestrating coup plots. The breaking point was a plot so audacious it couldn't be ignored. Burkina authorities claimed they had foiled a coup attempt scheduled for January 3, 2026, a plan that allegedly included the assassination of Captain Traoré himself. That was the final straw. On January 12, 2026, Burkina Faso submitted a formal extradition request to Togo, complete with an arrest warrant. The request went beyond coup plots, laying out a list of serious criminal charges: criminal embezzlement of public funds, illicit enrichment, corruption, and money laundering, among others. These weren't just political accusations. They were claims of massive financial crimes against the state. The Togolese authorities, who had reportedly already warned Damiba to stop any destabilizing activities, decided to act. As a regional mediator, Togo's credibility was on the line. Continuing to shelter a man so openly accused of plotting against a neighbor, especially a member of the new alliance of Sahel states, risked accusations of complicity. On January 16, 2026, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba was arrested at his residence. The legal process was stunningly fast. Damiba was brought before the Lomé Court of Appeal for a hearing that same day. The court reviewed Burkina Faso's request and received crucial guarantees from Ouagadougou. Burkina Faso promised to respect Damiba's physical integrity and dignity, ensure his right to a fair trial, and, critically, not apply the death penalty. This last promise was vital, as it neutralized a key legal obstacle to extradition. With those guarantees, the Togolese court gave its approval. The wheels of extradition turned with incredible speed. On the evening of January 17th, just one day after his arrest, Damiba was formally handed over to Burkina authorities. He was reportedly flown from Lomé to Ouagadougou, on a private jet chartered by Togo's National Intelligence Agency. The man who had seized power promising to restore security was now returning to his country as a prisoner, accused of being its greatest threat. The hunter was now the hunted, captured by his own former subordinate. It was a moment of profound irony, sending a chilling and unambiguous message across West Africa. The old rules were changing, and the shield of exile was no longer guaranteed. To understand the gravity of this moment, you have to understand the two men at the center of the storm: Captain Ibrahim Traoré and Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. This isn't just a political rivalry. It's a story of a student surpassing his master and a battle for the soul of a nation at war. First, the man in handcuffs, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. Before his dramatic rise and fall, he was a lieutenant colonel who sold himself as a seasoned military intellectual, an expert in counter-terrorism who had even authored a book on the subject. When he seized power in January 2022 from the democratically elected president Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, he did so on a wave of popular frustration. The country was reeling from a relentless jihadist insurgency, and the Kabore government was seen as weak and ineffective. The final straw was the horrific 2021 Inata attack, where gendarmes were left to starve at their posts before being overrun by insurgents. Damiba presented himself as the solution, the strongman who would finally turn the tide. He promised to restore security, reform the military, and unite the nation. For a moment, many wanted to believe him. But his promises quickly turned to dust. In just 8 months, the security situation arguably got worse. The military remained plagued by the same problems that had festered before. The man who took power decrying failure became a symbol of that same failure, injuring the very soldiers who brought him to power. And that brings us to the man who now holds Damiba's fate in his hands: Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Born in 1988, he's one of the world's youngest leaders, representing a total generational shift. Where Damiba was a high-ranking officer, part of the military establishment, Traoré was a captain on the front lines. He was part of the Cobra Special Forces, fighting day in and day out in the heart of the insurgency. He and his men were the ones experiencing Damiba's failures firsthand. When Traoré and his fellow officers moved against Damiba in September 2022, their justification was simple and brutal. The strategy wasn't working. They accused Damiba of failing to deliver the security he promised. But Traoré's leadership quickly grew beyond a simple security focus. He tapped into a deep well of popular anger that went far beyond the battlefield. He embraced a fiery, nationalist, and Pan-Africanist ideology that resonated powerfully with the country's youth. He spoke the language of sovereignty, of breaking the chains of neocolonialism. In a move that sent shockwaves across the region, he expelled French forces from Burkina Faso and strengthened ties with Russia. He formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, with Mali and Niger, creating a new anti-imperialist bloc. He quoted Thomas Sankara, the country's revered revolutionary icon, and framed his struggle not just as a fight for Burkina Faso, but for the dignity of Africa. This has made him a hero to many, but it has also made him a target. The Traoré government claims to have foiled at least 5 separate coup attempts since he took power. Each foiled plot only seems to strengthen his narrative, that he is being targeted because he refuses to bend to the old order. So we have two figures, forged in the same military, who took the same path to power, but with starkly different visions. Damiba, the establishment officer who failed to deliver, and Traoré, the young, revolutionary captain who has redefined the struggle as one for total sovereignty. The arrest of Damiba isn't just settling a personal score. It's the climax of this ideological battle. What do you think? Is Captain Traoré a true revolutionary leader in the spirit of Thomas Sankara, or is this a dangerous consolidation of power? Does the arrest of Damiba signal a new era of stability and justice for Burkina Faso, or will it only lead to more division? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you're finding this analysis insightful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more on the events shaping our continent. The charges that brought Damiba back to Ouagadougou paint a picture of a man obsessed with reclaiming power, no matter the cost. Burkina Faso's government describes a sophisticated plan to decapitate the state, assassinate its leaders, and throw the nation into crisis. All while a brutal war against jihadists rages on. Let's break down the details of this alleged conspiracy. The most shocking allegation centers on the foiled coup attempt of January 3, 2026. According to Burkina Faso's Minister of Security, Mahamadou Sana, this was a multi-pronged assassination scheme. The plot allegedly involved an armed strike on Captain Traoré's personal residence, with the clear objective of what was chillingly termed his neutralization. But Traoré wasn't the only target. The plan reportedly involved a series of targeted assassinations aimed at destabilizing the entire state. To achieve this, the conspirators also allegedly planned to neutralize critical military infrastructure. At the top of their list was the National Drone Base, a key asset in Burkina Faso's war against insurgents. Destroying this facility would have crippled the army's surveillance and strike capabilities, creating widespread chaos. The government claims Damiba was the central coordinator of this entire operation. From Togo, he was allegedly responsible for financing the plot and recruiting the people to carry it out. State television has paraded a series of alleged conspirators who delivered televised confessions, claiming to be acting on Damiba's direct instructions. Intelligence officials say they've uncovered a trove of digital evidence mapping out the networks. And where did the money come from? The Burkina government has made explosive accusations, pointing fingers at external powers and neighboring countries, with some officials specifically naming Côte d'Ivoire. These allegations, which have been met with skepticism by some analysts, elevate the conspiracy from an internal power struggle to a regional conflict, pitting the new alliance of Sahel states against more Western-aligned nations. This wasn't an isolated incident. The January 2026 plot was simply the latest in a series of conspiracies authorities have laid at Damiba's feet. In late 2024, he was publicly named as the head of a military wing of another vast conspiracy aimed at overthrowing Traoré. Beyond the conspiracies are the financial charges. Damiba stands accused of criminal embezzlement of public funds, illicit enrichment, and money laundering. These charges suggest that during his brief 8 months in power, he may have been systematically looting the state. The funds allegedly stolen from the Burkina people were, according to the prosecution, the very funds used to finance the networks of betrayal and assassination. The picture that emerges is one of a former leader who refused to accept defeat. While Captain Traoré was on the world stage rallying his people, Damiba was allegedly in the shadows, moving money and planning a bloody return to power. The government's narrative is clear. Damiba posed an existential threat, and his capture wasn't political revenge, but national survival. The dramatic arrest of Paul-Henri Damiba is the final act in a play that began 4 years ago, a brutal cycle of coups driven by a nation's desperation for security. To truly grasp the significance of Damiba's downfall, we have to go back to the moment he himself stepped onto the political stage. It was January 2022. Burkina Faso was on its knees. The democratically elected president, Marc Christian Kabore, seemed powerless as jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS swallowed vast swaths of the country. Public anger was at a boiling point. The military felt abandoned. The tipping point was the Inata attack in November 2021. It was a national trauma. A gendarmerie post was overrun, and over 50 officers died. The horror was compounded by the revelation that the gendarmes had been sending desperate messages for weeks, reporting that they had run out of food. Their pleas went unanswered. This catastrophic failure created a power vacuum, and Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, the counter-terrorism strategist, stepped in. On January 24, 2022, he led a coup that removed Traore. Initially, many saw him as a necessary evil. He dissolved the government, suspended the constitution, and declared that his only priority was to restore security. But the reality of power is a lot harder than theory. The promises he made began to unravel almost immediately. The jihadist attacks continued. The military was still losing ground. Damiba, the man who seized power because his predecessor had failed on security, was now failing in exactly the same way. This failure was not lost on the young officers serving on the front lines, the ones dying every day. Among them was a 34-year-old artillery officer, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He and his comrades felt Damiba was making the wrong choices and had lost touch. The frustration that had brought Damiba to power was now turning against him. On September 30, 2022, just 8 months after Damiba's coup, the cycle repeated. Gunfire erupted in Ouagadougou. Captain Traoré and his unit took control. They accused Damiba of failing to deliver on his core promise. After a tense standoff, Damiba agreed to resign and fled to Togo, having been given guarantees for his safety. The irony is suffocating. Damiba's entire claim to legitimacy was his ability to solve the security crisis. He had failed, and in doing so, he had paved the way for his own demise. He proved that just replacing one military leader with another wasn't a solution if the vision didn't change. Captain Traoré learned this lesson well. He didn't just promise better tactics, he offered a new ideology. He understood the war wasn't just about soldiers. It was about national pride and sovereignty. He broadened the definition of the enemy to include not just the jihadists, but the neo-colonial powers he accused of pulling the strings. That's the crucial difference. Damiba's coup was a technocratic seizure of power. Traoré's was an ideological revolution. Damiba saw a failed security strategy. Traoré saw a failed nation, broken by foreign interference. The arrest of Damiba is Traoré's way of closing the loop and declaring that the era of simple power grabs is over. The extradition of Paul-Henri Damiba is a seismic event with huge implications for Burkina Faso and the entire continent. It shatters old norms, sets a potentially dangerous new precedent, and raises critical questions about justice, stability, and sovereignty. First, within Burkina Faso, Damiba's return under arrest is a massive consolidation of power for Captain Ibrahim Traoré. By bringing his predecessor back in custody, Traoré is sending a clear message to any potential rivals. There is no safe haven. For a leader who has reportedly survived multiple coup attempts, this is a powerful deterrent, but it's also a high-stakes gamble. Damiba, despite his failures, likely still has allies in the armed forces. His arrest could be seen as a provocation that deepens divisions within the army. Then there's the legal side. Damiba is facing a laundry list of charges, from treason to corruption. His trial will be a landmark event. It could expose the inner workings of the state and the alleged role of foreign powers. However, the promise made to Togo, that the death penalty would not be applied, hangs over the proceedings. This was a necessary diplomatic concession, but it creates a complex situation, as Traoré's government has considered reinstating capital punishment for crimes like high treason. How the state navigates this will be a major test. Zooming out, the Pan-African implications are enormous. The extradition sets a new precedent for how African nations deal with deposed leaders. Traditionally, a neighboring country would offer asylum to prevent further bloodshed. Togo's decision to hand Damiba over signals a major shift, suggesting a growing intolerance for cross-border destabilization, especially among the nations of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. This event is being framed in pro-Traoré circles as a powerful affirmation of African sovereignty. The narrative is that Africa is no longer a playground for foreign-backed plots. In this view, Togo's cooperation is a victory for the AES and a sign of solidarity against external interference. It sends a message to Western powers and regional bodies like ECOWAS, from which the Sahel states have withdrawn, that a new set of rules is being written in the Sahel. However, others will see this very differently. Critics in other West African capitals view it as a dangerous erosion of diplomatic norms that could make peaceful transitions of power even harder. If leaders believe they will be hunted down after leaving office, they may be more inclined to cling to power at all costs, leading to more violent conflicts. Ultimately, Damiba's arrest is a turning point. It's a moment where the internal power struggles of Burkina Faso have collided with the shifting geopolitical plates of the entire continent. It is both a declaration of strength by Ibrahim Traoré and a test of the very principles of sovereignty and justice he claims to champion. Africa is watching. The story of Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba's capture is a stark lesson in the unforgiving nature of power. The man who took control promising to be a savior has been returned to his homeland as a prisoner, accused of being its greatest saboteur. His dramatic fall from grace, orchestrated by his successor, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, is a pivotal moment in the history of Burkina Faso and a profound statement in the redefinition of African sovereignty. This event marks the absolute consolidation of Ibrahim Traoré's authority. By breaking the unwritten rule of safe exile for deposed leaders, he has shown a level of resolve that puts all challengers on notice. He has declared that the revolution he leads has no room for dissenters. This is the culmination of the narrative he has carefully built. That he is not just another military ruler, but the guardian of a national awakening, targeted by traitors and their foreign backers because he dares to demand true independence. The accusations against Damiba are staggering. A diabolical plot of assassination, massive corruption, and collusion with external forces to bring his own nation to its knees. His capture is presented as an act of national salvation, but serious questions remain. Will this unprecedented extradition bring lasting stability, or will it sow deeper seeds of division? Will Damiba's trial be a transparent process of justice, or a political tool to eliminate a rival? And what does this mean for the rest of Africa, as a new, assertive bloc of nations in the Sahel redraws the continent's political map? Captain Ibrahim Traoré has made his move. He has hunted down his predecessor and brought him to face justice, fulfilling the prophecy of the hunter becoming the hunted. In doing so, he has placed a high-stakes bet on his vision for a sovereign and defiant Burkina Faso. An entire continent is now watching to see what happens next. The future of a nation of 23 million people hangs in the balance.